It is Thursday the 26th of September. It looks like the next swing higher is beginning in Bitcoin, at least to the top of the horrible range that we started in March. It's not clear yet, and I think we need to get through the end of the week and month end, because September can sometimes be a little bit ugly for crypto, but October pretty much is universally bullish. Let's take a look. We've certainly got ETH underperforming with this move in Bitcoin, so we'll take a look at that too. First of all, let's start with Bitcoin. So we've had 7 days of sideways consolidation at this 200-day moving average. We pretty much did that before in July. We had a really nasty long week, sideways under the 200-day moving average, and once we broke above it, we saw really strong, nice upside movement. And when we measure the moves from the swing we made on the 5th low on the 5th of August, our upside target is around 68,500. That would be the equal measured move from that 5th of August low, and that's also the kind of trend line resistance of this channel that we have been in since the 13th of March. However, I have to say that, sometimes when you get a nasty sideways range like that, you sometimes get a nasty false breakout. I feel like this has legs to keep going, but it needs to kind of close strong and keep going, because what we saw particularly overnight in US stock indexes, we saw a really nice strong move overnight following news of Chinese stimulus, and you get so far and then pretty nasty breakout. We're also, if we measure from this low, possibly in a fifth wave, and quite often that can be choppy and overlapping. By that I mean, normally in a trending market, right, you'll trend like this, and when you pull back you don't come into the previous swing, whereas in a fifth wave you can make it look like this and they overlap and chop into each other. But for now it looks pretty good and people are chasing. Now, how are you going to trade this? Well, if we look at previously, when you break out from a sideways range and you pull back to hourly moving averages, you see lower time frame 3-wave pullbacks, and those are your long entries. So I think if we get a strong close tonight, we can do that, and if you want to buy more, we can look for this to continue to 68,000. One that I would leave for now is ETH, because ETH is really, this is ETH against Bitcoin on a 4-hour. You can see that we've had a pretty nasty 3-wave rally, and potentially, this is support, but it looks like a continuation bearish head and shoulders pattern, doesn't it, on this 4-hour chart. One thing that's quite interesting, I think this should fall a little bit further, is that all the way down in this downtrend, if I zoom out a bit, in each swing we have bounced 50% and then continued lower. So this was 50%, and if we go back to this swing high to low, we bounced 50% here. Let's put it on, you can see what I mean. So there's our 50% bounce. We kind of double touched and rolled over. Even on the smaller swings, we keep doing these 50% retraces. So from this low to high here, 50% and so on. And we can, from this low here, we can keep doing this 50% continued lower. And so we really need to break that pattern, that 50% pattern, to say that ETH is going to start outperforming Bitcoin, and then we can really talk about altcoin rallies and so on. So for now, potentially, if we were now, mean reverting markets tend to keep mean reverting. So we could have a little false breakdown from this head and shoulders pattern in ETH against Bitcoin and just pull back to 50% and bounce from there. So that's 0.0403. That would count as like a false breakdown, if you like, and then if we saw a strong rally from there, we can talk about a bottom and a follow through from the low that we made last week. But for now, certainly not clear that we are going to see any recovery in ETH in the short term. In terms of the big ones that are holding in with Bitcoin, Solana is a really good one to watch. Solana has been underperforming as well, but has had this big fight. Again, we've had 7 days underneath the 200-day moving average. We've previously had a bit of a fight at this 200-day moving average, and then we ended up washing through it. I think this one is looking, if we can hold above it, looking pretty good to continue higher. Now, if I measure from the, do the same as Bitcoin, if I measure from the low that we made on 5th of August, here's our first swing, here's our three-wave correction. You can see that we are right at this 61.8 level, so 155 is what we need to hold above to keep going higher to 177 next, which would be the equal measured move from this low. So this swing and this swing would be equal. However, there's kind of combination, you know, this makes me a little bit more nervous than Bitcoin, because this is kind of three things of resistance. So if I draw from these highs, this is like third touch of this trend line, 200-day moving average, that 61.8 level. Not clear that we're quite over the hump yet. But I think if Bitcoin can keep going and follow through, then Solana should follow, and first target is going to be 177, 178, and the top of this range, potentially a little bit higher than that. Looking pretty good for Solana then. Another one that's really tempting and testing potentially breakout levels is Ripple. Let's go to the weekly chart of Ripple. I'm going to put regular candles on, take everything off, and you can see in Ripple we're stuck underneath this weekly 200 moving average, and really since July we have not been able to close above it. Previously it's been really tough, resistance, then support, then resistance, then support, and here we are stuck underneath it again. So everybody looking at this choppy overlapping correction in Ripple for the next leg higher is watching this to see if we can close above this 200 week moving average and continue higher. If we can, I'm going to go back to the low at the start of January 2023 from this low here. And our upside kind of measured moves targets are 0.79 and then 1.03. I like this 1.03 level because it matches a fib pattern. So if we look from the low in 2020 to the high that we made here in 2021, when you bounce from a 786 fib, your first target's a 38.2. We did that very nicely here. When you bounce from a 886 fib, which we did here, you confirm it above the 786 fib, which we've had a fight over, but now we're going higher. If we break out from here, your first target should be the 50% back test, which is at 1.04, which would be that equal measured move. And a equal measured move back to a 50% level for me is like my favorite reversal trade setup. So if you're long Ripple, I think that this 104 level would be a good place to target, and watch out for a reversal there. That's a good place to take some profit if you've been hanging on for a long time. So for now we need to break out, and clearly if we look at how this is behaving, it's not rolling over. This is again sideways consolidation. I think unfortunate in this one, I would say that from this low it looks like 5 waves up, which should mean 3 waves back. And so have we done that here? I think we have. And so I think we could potentially in Ripple see if Bitcoin and Solana can continue. I think in Ripple we could see some follow through, and I'm looking for a breakout from this consolidation, and those would be my targets. So what has also been pretty exciting lately has been meme coins. One of the ones that hasn't quite got going yet is Pepe. So again, just like all of these other coins, underneath 200-day moving average. In this one, not the 200 weekly, luckily. Now I'm going to talk about where I've drawn a whole bunch of lines. And this is going to be quite important resistance in Pepe, but I do think there's good potential for it to continue higher from here. You can see previously we've made very nice 3-wave corrections, and then we've broken out. We've got going, but sometimes it's not quite clear when you draw these channels where your breakout is. So for example, if we draw it here, but we base it off this lows here, you can see it can be pretty choppy when you break out before you get going, and once you do, you see a really nice move. And so that's kind of where we are here. We could see it get a little bit choppy around this 200-day moving average before we get going in Pepe, and we kind of really need the big boys to go, and then this should follow. I'm a bit concerned, you know, we really need good liquidity to come back and people to feel wealthy again for this to get going. And I'm going to take that line off because I really want to see us, once we break out like that, I start looking at the channel the other way. So by that I mean, sorry, like this. So measure from these lows to these highs, project from here. So my first target before I think we see a meaningful pullback, if we can keep pushing, would be the top of this channel. We do that when we break out here, and it works pretty well. So here was our 3-wave correction. And when we break out of it, we start looking at a channel going the other way. So if we do that here, you can use the channel tool, or you can just clone your trend lines. You can see we had a very nice move here. This was our first target, then we broke out, and so on. So Pepe, how this one I'm kind of sitting on, waiting to see if we can close above this 200-day, because I think it's going to be pretty tough resistance. But again, if the big boys go, then the smaller ones should follow. Some of them are doing that 50%. So SEI has been one that I have been following. And this one looks pretty good to be closing above the 200-day moving average, and therefore pointing to more upside. So that's a pretty good look for this one. But if we use fib retrace levels, if we do have a little bit of a chop here and we have a pullback, as long as we hold above from this high to low, as long as we hold above this 236 fib at 0.425, I like this to keep going higher to 0.56 in these previous swing highs and the 50% here. And because of the measurements between how much longer this wave 3 is, I would like to see a shallow wave 4 that holds this 0.425 and this one to continue higher. So not a good look to be buying this here. We really do need a couple of days of red candles to get in without getting run over. And around this 200 days may be where we see it, but I think this one is looking good to keep going higher, and this one is definitely outperforming, but pretty much all of the ones that were not doing so well are doing well. Floki, which I thought had been a bit of a lagger, has got bullish cross of the daily moving averages, nice consolidation, and this one is pushing higher too. Where's our weekly moving averages? A close above this weekly 20 should see some nice big follow through. We would be breaking out of this really nasty sideways range between these two weekly moving averages that we've been stuck in, and that would then look pretty good for more upside, I think, and a bottom back above this weekly 20 moving average would say bottom to me in Floki. So talking about the 50% rule, I know I've been following, there's a few, I've been following this Kai, and there are a few small coins that I've been looking at. And again, 236 fib and 50% level in Kai. If we do a shallow pullback here after breaking out from this channel and we can get above this 236 fib, then the 50% is going to be the target. If we are going to see a bigger pullback, it's going to be back to these swing lows and back to 50%. If this wave 1 is complete in Kai, 50% or 61.8 is very common retrace of a wave 1. And if we measure from this low that we made on the 16th to the high that we made on Tuesday, 50% is exactly where we are, where we've pulled back to. So we've also pulled back very nicely 4-hour 50 moving average. That is the hourly 200 moving average. This then becomes a really good place for Kai to bounce from. So I'm watching it. Now, when I'm not sure, we need to get back above this swing high, back above the hourly moving averages, back above the 236 fib from this high here, and we're on our way again. So that's back above 0.49. So also what would be a good trigger for a buy would be a bottoming pattern like, I don't know, a double bottom or an inverted head and shoulders pattern. That would be a good look for a bottom here, but this is definitely a level that I'm watching to say that this pullback is done, and this one's going to follow the big boys higher too. Another coin that I have been playing in is NPC. Let's go to where we are in this one, because for me this has maybe reached a little bit of a tricky level. I'm just gonna switch to regular candles. We're sideways at this 50% level. For the last 2 days, we've been closed at it. And I've been watching out for a bearish reversal because, you know, if we reverse here, we're likely to see a 50% pullback before we continue higher. At the moment, it's looking like pretty good to break out and hold above this 50% level. So I'm watching for the daily close in this one, because if we do, obviously, we're going to go level to level to level in this one. And because we're going to do that equal measured move thing for the next target, we're going to look for the 61.8 fib in this. So by that, I mean I measure this first swing from low to high here, project it from this low here, and you can see that takes us to the 61.8 next at 0.026. Now, what I don't want is to see a reversal there, because this is potentially then just a bearish pattern. And what would tell me that's the case is back underneath this 50% level. And we would see then a bigger pullback. So that's what I'm looking for in non-playable coin. Anyone is another one that I have been playing around with, and Sui is another one that's been looking really good too. Let's take a look at where we are in Sui on the weekly. Now, when you reverse at a 786 fib, which we did here, so I measured from this low to high, you have the first target, the 38.2, which we went beyond. If we stop here at 1.69, we could see a bigger pullback to that 1.38 level. If we do the fibs the other way, just because we would have hit that second target. If we do the fibs the other way, you can see this puts us really close to a 786 here as well. So if Sui is going to keep going higher, it's not going to close back underneath the 61.8. At each fib level, you know, it's like climbing a ladder. So this becomes support, resistance. If we get above it, we move our support up to here, and so on and so on. This one's looking really, really strong though. And if because of that, because this wave 3 is so big compared to this wave 1, it likely is going to make a 5-wave pattern. So a pullback here in Sui, even if it was just back to this in a wave 4, which would be similar to this wave 2, should hold this 1.52. So it would be a pretty good look if we get that here. And then very often in crypto, you know, those wave 5s are the strongest and longest. The markets tend to kind of accelerate as interest builds. So yeah, watch out for a reversal underneath 1.81, and look for 1.52 to be support to keep going higher, which would also be this previous swing low. This one's looking really good. Hope that's useful. If there's anything you're looking at, let me know. It's month end, it's still September, but October is around the corner next week.